So up to this point, the two other big groups of invertebrates, the Lophotrochozoa and the Ecdysozoa, have both been protostomes, meaning that they develop the mouth first, they use spiral cleavage, they have determinate cells. This last group of bilaterans is the Deuterostomes. So this includes us. There's two major groups here, the Echinoderms, which are going to be our starfish and sea urchins, and then the chordates. So you can see the echinoderms down here are kind of branching off of this first, and then from here on up this tree we're going to have chordates. Right here is where we're going to see the development of the vertebral column, VRA. So from here on we would have vertebrates. So that means we do actually have two groups of chordates that are invertebrates, and so these are the cephalochordates or the lancelets, and then the urochordates, which are the tunicates. So they all have the deuterostome development. That means that they develop the anus first and the mouth second, so deutero second, stoma's mouth. They have the radial cleavage, and then the cells are indeterminate. They can become any cell they need to be. So let's first look at the echinoderms. So echine means spiny, and then derm means skin. So they have spiny skin. They're typically slow moving. Some of them can be sessile, some of them are completely attached. The epidermis is covering a endoskeleton, so the endoskeleton actually has hard calcareous plates, so that's what gives them their spines. And then they have a really unique feature called the water vascular system. And this is a set of hydraulic canals. And what they do is they control the teeny tiny tube feet that function at the bottom for walking. So you can see this water vascular system over here. The water comes in through this large hole here called the madreporite, madre for mother, pore. It goes into this first central stone ring, and then it radiates out along these 5 pathways, and then the water through these radial canals, and then the water can be put into these little ampulla to extend each of these little tube feet. So if I want to extend a tube feet, I can squeeze this ampulla, push some water into it, and then move that tube feet. So this is really cool because this means that they are not really using their muscular system for movement as much as they're just using the force of water. So this is where, when you say who wins with a starfish versus a clam, the starfish wins. So if you tried to sit and open a clam, you would probably get tired before that clam does, without killing it and shucking it with a knife. However, a starfish can latch its tube feet onto the clam and pull open, and it's not really using muscle, it's just using water. And so it's not going to tire out as quickly as the clam. And as soon as the clam relaxes at all, the starfish will actually evert its stomach into the clam and secrete digestive enzymes and then digest the clam from the inside out. So they're very successful predators that way. They appear to have radial symmetry. So you might be thinking that these look a little bit more like a sea anemone than they do a chordate, because it looks like you can kind of cut them in any of 5 directions. However, this madreporite is actually set off to the side. If this was true radial symmetry, it would have to be directly in the center. And so because it's over here, there's really only one true bilateral plane of symmetry. If you look at a larva does have true bilateral symmetry. So these are bilaterans. There are several classes of echinoderms. So the first is asteroidea. Aster means star. And so these are going to be our sea stars. So you can see our couple of starfish over here, as well as the sea daisies. So sea daisies here have pentaradial symmetry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They just don't have the arms. And there's only about 3 species of sea daisies. And they use their tube feet to grip on the underside, to rocks, to surface, and then move around, and these are predators. Ophiroidea are similar, so these are brittle stars. They look slightly different, so usually they're going to have a small central disc and then kind of long, skinny arms. Most of them move, and they use their arms for movement, and they can actually snake them around a little bit. Some of them actually have these very bristly arms, and they will actually use them for filter feeding too. We have Echinoidea. Remember, echine means spiny. And so this is where we're going to have our sea urchins as well as sand dollars. So here's a sea urchin, and you can see that it's got some spines coming out. And then this one, you can actually see the 5 radiations of tube feet. And then this is our sand dollar. So usually when you find these, they're dead. But this is what a living sand dollar looks like, and the tube feet would be on the bottom side. This class, Crinoidea, is made up of sea lilies and sea feather stars. So a sea lily is this guy right here, where they live attached to the bottom from a stalk, and then they have these kind of feathery structures that allow them to filter feed. And then the feather star is down here, and you can see it's got these long kind of feathery arms. And this one is mobile, so it can actually move around using these big, long, flexible arms. And then arguably the weirdest group of echinoderms are the Holothuroidea, which are my sea cucumbers. And these don't look anything like the other ones. They do still have 5 pentaradial symmetry, except that the symmetry is along this way. So they're kind of elongated long ways from top to bottom, rather than kind of flattened like these guys. And they have a very reduced endoskeleton, so they're very, very soft, as opposed to most of these other species, which have kind of a harder structure to them. They do have 5 rows of tube feet that run along the body. You can see some of the tube feet on the bottom here. These guys also have some interesting mechanisms for avoiding predators. So they can shoot string. It's like a white goopy stringy matter at a predator, and what will happen is, because these are very slow, that gives the predator something to eat, and then they can kind of get away. If they're really threatened, they can eviscerate themselves and actually throw part of their internal organs out to be eaten while they can get away. Our last group of invertebrates is going to include a couple of our chordates. So they're the 2 most basal groups, so maybe the earliest to have branched off, which are the cephalochordates down here, and then the urochordates up here. So this is a tunicate. It's a sea squirt. They have kind of this central body cavity. If you take these out of the water and squeeze them, they are kind of like nature's squirt gun. And then cephalochordates right here, these are also called lancelets. These are actually found in Tampa Bay in the sand, and they filter feed with their little mouth parts up here. So being a chordate is a very special thing. So there are 4 key characteristics right here. And you absolutely need to know these, because this is totally going to be on the exam. And in order to be a chordate, you have to have a postanal tail. So here is the anus, and then this is the tail. You have to have what's called a notochord. So on this one, the notochord is actually going to be all the way from here, all the way down this structure on the body. They have a dorsal hollow nerve cord, so this would actually be between the notochord and the outside of the body. It's a little hard to draw, and then it would swell at the front for the brain. So for you, this is your spinal cord, and your notochord is actually usually what's going to become a vertebral column. So in these 2, they don't have vertebrae. And then you have pharyngeal gill slits. So these are the pharyngeal slits right here. For these species, those are going to be used for filter feeding food, just like gills. For other species, things like sharks, they actually become gills. For you, your pharyngeal gill slits are removed after embryo, and those just become pockets in your throat. So the cephalochordates actually have all 4 of these characteristics throughout their entire life. But you're probably thinking, well, I don't have a tail. You do. You used to. A postanal tail is actually your coccyx bone. But as an embryo, you did have a postanal tail. And so the urochordates actually have all of these 4 characteristics in their larvae, and then they lose most of them as an adult. So that's common in many vertebrates and other chordates, is to have all 4 of these at some point in development, and then to lose some of them as you become fully developed into an adult.